Hello everybody and welcome to episode 9 of Own the Road with AutoTrader, where we make car stuff simple for Canadians. My name is Jodi and I'm the editor-in-chief of AutoTrader.
And I'm Dan Alika. I am AutoTrader's road test editor.
Dan, today we're talking all about all-wheel drive.
All right.
I think all-wheel drive is a super important topic. Lots of Canadians are interested in.
Yes.
So we're going to go through stuff like pros and cons, what is all-wheel drive versus 4x4 and the differences, all of that good stuff. We also have some interesting Ask an Expert questions for later.
Sweet.
But let's start by chatting about why all-wheel drive is so popular with Canadian drivers.
I mean, obviously, in this country, we get a lot of inclement weather, come wintertime especially. But I also think that, the marketing geniuses at all these car companies have played a more significant role than the average Canadian would like to admit in being influenced into making all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive a prerequisite. Because I personally, after, all these years doing this job, I still do not think it is absolutely mandatory, and it's definitely not as important as winter tires.
Yeah, that's very true. Like, I've driven, we both have Volkswagen Golfs that are front-wheel drive. I've driven mine through numerous winters, many, many snowstorms, and I have a really good set of winter tires, and it's front-wheel drive, again, never got stuck.
Yeah, I think, I do understand from a sort of precautionary approach, right? People have that better safe than sorry kind of.
It's like an added security blanket kind of thing.
For sure. But my thing is, I do think a lot of people feel too confident because of having more traction. The important thing to remember is that, it doesn't make you stop any quicker. And that's a big one. And that's usually when, if you think about it right now, just picture, I know it's still summertime and we don't like to think about winter, but for a moment, take yourself to wintertime, you're driving in your vehicle, whatever it may be, and you start to slip or skid on the road. Think about the scenario in the kind of moment that led up to it. Rarely is it something that happens during acceleration. It's usually when you're trying to slow down and you start to, slide because there's black ice or whatever. So tell me, what would all-wheel drive do to help you in that situation?
That's exactly it. So all-wheel drive helps you get going faster, but it does not help you stop faster.
Yeah, and like I said, it's like overconfident.
Yeah.
I think it provides, it's almost like the idea that, I ride my bike, I wear a helmet when I do so, but I'm not taking headers intentionally, right? I'm not leaping off my bike.
I mean, that would be hilarious
head
to watch.
first, but and it's the same thing with all-wheel drive. To me, it's the equivalent of, a helmet while you're riding your bike. It's something that you shouldn't want to use, but I see a lot of people in the wintertime driving a pickup truck or an SUV just blasting down the road in a snowstorm.
And they feel invincible with all-wheel drive, but I've seen so many times, but back when the Detroit Auto Show was held in January, we would drive down to Detroit from Toronto, and every year, without doubt, there would be a blizzard or something, and that's a really dangerous drive to do when you have that kind of bad weather. And on my way there, I would be very careful, winter tires and everything, and I would see so many all-wheel drive trucks and SUVs in the ditch.
Yeah.
The whole drive was littered with them because those drivers are just taking too many risks because they're relying on their all-wheel drive to make them feel like Superman or something.
And the other thing to talk about that I get into a lot when I talk, I'm a big advocate of winter tires. I know you are as well. And I talk a lot about that, and we can get into it a little bit later. But when I ask people, why don't you have winter tires on your, brand new truck or whatever? And quite often I get hit with the response, oh, they're expensive. And it's like, cool, man, you spent $80,000 on this pickup truck and you're sweating $1,000 in tires. Not to mention, by having two sets of tires, you're prolonging the lifespan of both of them.
Exactly.
So you're not going to have to replace them as often. So
so it really is an investment.
Yeah, but it's just to me, it's so silly. How could you sit there and say, oh, winter tires are expensive and unnecessary when you've spent $80,000 on a vehicle?
But there are also so many people where I say, oh, why don't you have winter tires? And they say, oh, well, I have all-wheel drive.
Yeah.
And then I have to tell them, well, actually, I have to be that person to remind them that, even if you have all-wheel drive, you still need winter tires.
Yeah. And I said this, in one of, I think it was the Chrysler Pacifica review, which you can all go watch on the AutoTrader YouTube channel. It's not I don't know if you guys need a reminder. Like, Jodi and I are journalists. We're not salespeople. We don't make money. We don't get, bonuses for recommending certain vehicles. What we do is for your benefit. Okay? So all of the advice that we're giving you guys is what we say, hey, this is in your best interest based on our experience. So us telling you to get winter tires, we're not getting handed Cal Tire's not like, hey, thanks, good job, guys. Here's a gift card. We don't make
any kickbacks from these recommendations.
We're doing this because we want you guys to be safe, and we want to see you guys out there, driving confidently but driving safely. And if winter tires are the way to do that, that is way more important than spending the money on all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive.
Right. So let's then go over the differences between all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive, because they are different, and I don't think a lot of people kind of understand the difference.
Agreed.
So let's demystify this.
Joseph! So, all-wheel drive, the kind of overview definition, I would say, is like it's a automatic system that cannot be manipulated by the driver, as in you cannot activate or deactivate it.
Right. It's like a completely hands-free.
Yeah, and of course, there's exceptions to the rule, different drive modes. The Subaru WRX STI was a good example. RIP, a car that's no longer.
Pour one out.
But that had, that center differential that you could adjust. So, somebody might say, well, technically, Dan, then would that make it a four-wheel drive system? No, because you can't completely disengage the system. So if it's locked in and it will disconnect on its own, but you can't do that, then that would be an all-wheel drive system.
Right.
And then a four-wheel drive system would be an engageable system. So one that typically you would see on a pickup truck or something like a Jeep Wrangler, where you can run it in rear-wheel drive and then engage four-wheel drive.
Right.
So that's it. Those are the differences.
Yeah, and so typically the all-wheel drive systems that most of us are used to will drive the front wheels until it detects some type of slippage, and then it will automatically send power to power all the wheels to give you extra traction.
It's rare to have like full-time all-wheel drive, like Subaru, of course, synonymous with all-wheel drive, and its systems are full-time. That means there's always power going to all four wheels.
But most vehicles are not like that, that are all-wheel drive.
They disconnect.
Yeah. And the reason they do that is because it helps the fuel economy if you're only driving two wheels versus four.
Yeah.
And so that's the benefit of those systems. Sometimes you'll hear them referred to as slip and grip systems.
Yeah.
Which kind of explains how they work.
Yeah. That's it's an interesting, kind of clever term for it. But yeah, literally, there's also like differentials, right? Torsen, people think it's a brand. That's just torque sensing. So it's the same thing when it senses that in this case torque, and it'll distribute it, and it's the same sort of approach with these all-wheel drive systems, right? Where it will react. That is the other thing, right? Is that like the difference in reality that you'll notice is like proactive versus reactive systems. So certain systems, all-wheel drive systems, tend to be proactive in that they can, adjust for conditions before anything happens, where a four-wheel drive system with an automatic setting, which you're seeing more and more in pickup trucks these days, those are more what I would describe as reactive systems. So you can actually feel that four-wheel, torque distribution engage, whereas in an all-wheel drive system, usually you can't. It's like completely indiscernible, which is good.
Yeah, because that means it's just working on its own and you don't notice it, which is exactly what it's supposed to be doing. Although sometimes in like newer vehicles, they have like a display that shows you where the power is going.
I love that.
So because you can't feel it, it's really nice to know what your car is doing. And so I really love those kinds of information displays that tell you that cool stuff. And then the other thing to note about 4x4 versus all-wheel drive is the type of platform they're usually on, right? So like truck frame.
Yeah, body on frame. That's typically,
so that's
what
stuff
a
like
4x4.
A Jeep Wrangler or like a Ford Bronco.
Yeah, like any like pickup truck based, SUV, like even well, obviously the Nissan Frontier, Toyota Tacoma, bigger ones like the Tundra and stuff like that, the Chevrolet Suburban. You've got, the Infiniti QX80 and the Nissan Armada. So any like big SUVs tend to have those systems. But even something like the Jeep Cherokee has like an engageable, and that's body on frame, and that's like a 4x4 system, as you would call it.
Yeah, and so let's talk about use cases. So for all-wheel drive, that would be, regular road driving, bad weather.
Yeah.
And then 4x4, you really don't need it unless you're going off-road.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about these modern systems that have automatic settings, and even the Wrangler now, right? Jeep recognizes that it's, the vast majority of its clientele, hate to break it to you, Jeep people, but aren't using these vehicles as they were designed. It's a lifestyle vehicle. It's about looking the part. So you can get a transfer case now, it's been available for a few years now, that has an automatic setting as opposed to just either rear wheel drive or high and low range gearing. This has one of those reactive systems, so it operates in rear wheel drive, and then if it needs to chip in, it'll send torque to the front wheels as well.
Right.
But definitely, if let's say you've got a truck and you're, I don't know, you have a boat and you're launching your boat, you're going to want to engage that four-wheel drive system as you back into the water and as you're pulling out, just to make sure that you have the traction to get out of that situation. But like it's not the type of system that you're going to like use all the time.
And I think part of the problem with 4x4 systems is that a lot of people who have them don't understand how to use like the 4-low settings. So why don't you go over the difference between all of those different settings and like when you should use them and when you should definitely not use them?
Yeah, for sure. So the idea is, again, like I said, a modern four-wheel drive system in something like a Chevrolet Silverado or a Ford F-150, Ram 1500, whatever, it's going to have an automatic setting. So that's great, in the wintertime. Leave it in that. Again, it'll run in rear wheel drive until it detects wheel spin, and then it'll send some torque to the front wheels as well. In the summertime, this time of year, you can leave it in rear wheel drive most of the time. That's going to be your most efficient setting. Four wheel high is great for, I don't know, let's say you're on some, old logging road, or on like kind of a rough cottage road, and you just need a little bit more traction. Then you are going to engage that four-wheel high. Four-wheel low, the low means low-range gearing, and it means don't use it unless you were like doing some. So
you're like crawling over a boulder or something.
Yeah, or if you're doing some sort of let's say that you've got some like old tree stump sitting in your yard that you want to rip out of there. You wrap a chain around it. You're going to want to engage four-wheel low. But otherwise, that's not something, it's really hard on the drivetrain to engage that system at speeds above 15 kilometers an hour.
You can have serious damage if you use that setting just driving on the road.
And even four-wheel high, some older systems, if you open the owner's manual, which all of you should, that's definitely one of those things I think, people overlook. You should open your owner's manual, especially if you own a vehicle with different, terrain settings or different four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive settings. But some of these older systems would have speed limits where it's like, do not use above 85 kilometers an hour. And, that's one of those things I think people don't understand and might engage that system because, again, it's like, well, I've got four-wheel drive and I'm on the highway, but it can actually damage the transfer case, which is what shifts that torque around.
Yeah, and that's a very expensive repair. And just something else to be aware of is using some of these systems. Some SUVs and trucks allow you to do it while in motion, and some you have to be stopped.
Yes.
So you have to be really sure which one applies to your vehicle.
So traditionally speaking, it would be mechanical levers. That was always like the giveaway, right? Is that you can't be yanking on a mechanical transfer case lever behind the wheel of a vehicle while it's in motion. Nowadays, most systems, with the exception of, the Jeep Wrangler and a few others, use a rotary dial or push buttons to pick your different settings. But even so, that does not necessarily mean that it's, one of those like on the fly systems. And you definitely can't engage four-wheel low on the fly, once again, because it's not something that you're supposed to be using at speed anyways. So those ones, as kind of a fail-safe, like you have to shift into neutral first in order to engage it, which is, A, there's a lot going on, but B, it's almost like are you sure you want to do this? Because it's, it needs to be deliberate. It's not something that you want to do accidentally. So you would have to stop, engage neutral, shift it into 4 low. But yeah, open your owner's manual, make sure you know what system your vehicle has. And also, again, just don't do it just because you think. If you're shopping for a vehicle, don't buy it just because. Now, again, the popularity of all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive in Canada means if you look at, the Mercedes lineup, for example, every vehicle in Canada, with the exception of like roadsters and the high-performance ones, but, the C-Class, like let's say like a C300 or whatever, or like a GLC class or a GLE class SUV, all of those are all-wheel drive in Canada, whereas in the States you can still buy rear-wheel drive models.
Yeah, and that's how popular all-wheel drive is in Canada, is that most cars that are available here are only available with all-wheel drive.
Yeah, the take rate is so high.
I mean, even brands like Genesis, for example, every single one of their vehicles comes standard with all-wheel drive, and that's the case for a lot of the luxury automakers, and increasingly for a lot of the mainstream automakers as well.
But also, just as one of those little things to consider for you guys out there is like, remember, that also means that these automakers can charge more money, right? On average, all-wheel drive adds, $1,500 to $2,000. That's about the safe number to kind of say that that's what it would add to the cost of a vehicle. So of course, if an automaker can charge you more money for a vehicle, especially under the guise of, hey, this is something you need.
Yeah, it's a safety feature.
It's, these automakers are in the business of making money. So once again, take that step back and just ask yourself, do you need all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive? If it's an upgrade, is it something that you absolutely have to pay for? And once again, it does not excuse you from getting winter tires, even if you live in a place like BC. Because the rule of thumb is generally about 8 degrees Celsius. That's when the rubber compound starts to react a little more slowly. It hardens up a little bit. So once the average ambient temperature drops below 8 degrees, that's when you should switch to winter tires. Someone like me, who I don't drive my personal car that often, I might put a couple thousand kilometers on it a year. So I opted for what are called all-weather tires. And this is another sort of misunderstood area of, tires and the importance of them, is that they are winter rated. So they have that little mountain snowflake symbol, and that's how you'll know if the tire you're looking at is a proper winter rated tire, because we could get into a whole thing about, snow tires. It's a misnomer.
It'll probably be another episode we do closer to winter.
Oh my gosh.
Because there's a lot to go over.
Because, virtually all season tires are going to, be considered like snow rated, right? If it's like an all-terrain, all-season tire, it'll be what's called mud and snow. Snow tire is a misnomer. We're talking winter tires, that mountain snowflake symbol. And all-weather tires, which were invented by this brand, I think it's from Sweden. It's called Nokian. And so they're fully winter rated, but they're an all-season tire as well. So they're called all-weather tires. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. Once again, they're not for everyone. They're really ideal for, someone like me who doesn't drive that often. And just the idea of having 2 sets of tires doesn't really make a lot of sense, because in the wintertime, when I last had winter tires on my Golf, I realized that I had put, less than 400 kilometers on my car.
That's nothing.
Over the course from November when I swapped to April when I took them off. and I needed new tires. And I was like, I'm spending a lot of time and money doing this, twice a year swap that I don't really need to be doing. So I opted for all weathers, and I love them. But again, they're all weather tires. They're not all season tires. So they are winter rated, and that's the important one. So if you go to your local tire dealer or dealership or wherever you might buy your tires, talk to a technician or talk to a sales rep there, but make sure that the tire you're looking at has that mountain snowflake symbol on it, because that's the only way for sure you'll know whether your tire is winter rated.
Right. And again, we'll do a whole episode about this closer to the winter, because there's just so much to go over. But going back to all-wheel drive, just to do like a quick pros and cons, really the only pro is extra traction and that extra security that you get in bad
remember,
weather.
traction and grip are two
Not
very different things.
Yeah.
Traction is what gets you going. That's putting power down. But grip is what actually is going to keep you on the road, and that's where tires come into play.
And then the cons are that, like you mentioned, it's more expensive.
Yep.
You'll have a higher fuel bill because of all-wheel drive, so that's also something to consider when you're shopping around, is to budget for that.
Especially four-wheel drive. Sorry, just to jump in. That's another thing, that if you're looking at a pickup truck, you'll notice that a four-wheel drive version has a much higher rating, and that's not just because of factoring in when it's run in four-wheel drive. It's the mechanical drag of that transfer case, right?
Because it's also very heavy.
Yeah, and all those parts, even if the system is decoupled, that they're still turning. It's just that they're not hooked up.
Yep.
So that's mechanical drag, and that's going to impact your fuel economy.
Yep. So just to keep that in mind again when you're shopping. And then also I wanted to talk about EVs and all-wheel drive, because there's a lot of really great EVs that are dual motor now, which means they have a motor on each axle that drives all the wheels. The benefit is that, again, you get extra traction, and you can most of the time you can also turn it off, so you can extend your range by driving only two wheels.
Is that true?
For some cars, yeah.
Oh, okay.
They have like a range mode where you can like
Interesting.
digitally decouple it.
I've not experienced one of those before. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a pretty neat feature. And then with EVs, if you do have a dual motor, it often has less range.
Yeah, for sure.
So just something, again, to keep in mind if you're shopping for an all-wheel drive electric vehicle. Yeah. Dual motor gives you extra traction, but will have less range. So it's like a give and a take.
I think there's the Hyundai Ioniq 5. There's the rear-wheel drive long-range version. It uses the same. It's like a 77.4 kilowatt-hour battery. And it's got somewhere in the neighborhood of like 480 kilometers of range. And then if you go with the all-wheel drive version, so the dual motor version, same battery pack, that range drops to like somewhere closer to 400. So it's like a significant drop.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, it's something to keep in mind if efficiency is, high on your list of reasons to buy an EV. It's again not explicitly necessary. Vehicles like the Kia Niro, that's been a long-standing example of the fact that you don't need all-wheel drive.
Yeah, because those vehicles are front-wheel drive only.
Yeah, whether you're talking about the hybrid, the plug-in hybrid, or the fully electric version.
And that's another thing to mention, is that typically, like we said, all-wheel drive vehicles will have a penalty on fuel economy. These days, however, there are a lot of great hybrid options for all-wheel drive, SUVs and crossovers and like sedans and stuff.
And Toyota's system, Jodi and I were talking earlier this morning about it, that Toyota's system is really cool and sort of unique in the fact that with the hybrid models, that all-wheel drive is actually, it's an independent system. So there's a dedicated electric motor for the rear wheels. It's not connected to the rest of the powertrain at all.
Yep. So you get all that extra traction without the ding on your fuel economy.
And it's really cool. So it's an on-demand system. Again, it chips in with that electric motor driving the rear wheels. Also, like in reverse, when you shift into reverse, it'll automatically engage. So that's how you have, that fuel-free operation.
Yeah, and it's pretty legit too. Like I've driven Priuses with this they call it all-wheel drive system, and it's fantastic. With a good set of winter tires, you will not get get stuck.
No.
It's pretty impressive.
In the I just recently drove the RAV4 Prime, the plug-in hybrid version. That also, because the plug-in hybrids and the regular hybrids use the same all-wheel drive approach, the same system. It's really good. And I didn't do anything. It's a RAV4 Prime. You're not going four-wheeling in it, but it is like confidence inspiring, and it's just neat to know how. And again, it has that display you were talking about, so you can actually watch how it works. And
it's just a really smart solution. I thought it was very clever when they came out with it, because you get the best of both worlds that way, and we love that. So great job, Toyota. If you have any questions about all-wheel drive or 4x4, anything like that, please email us at expert@trader.ca. We've probably missed something, but if you guys have questions, definitely let us know. Today's Ask an Expert is from Andy and Marco, who we both know very well. So, long-time listener, first-time caller. Wow. He has 3 questions for us, okay? First question. You are both seasoned drivers, but do you think you could pass a G1 test today?
I think I could. I genuinely do. And that's not just, me being overly confident. I just think that I'm very cognizant of, the rules of the road, and I really take that stuff seriously. And so I think I could, without having to crack one of those books.
Yeah, that show you all the answers. Yeah, which I definitely used to study when I was doing my G1 back in the day.
So I didn't, because that was just the kind of teenager I was.
It was like cheating.
Oh,
I felt like I was cheating by using that book.
So here's my confession right here for you and all of our listeners. I failed my first G1 test because I didn't I was too busy, chasing girls and doing dumb stuff, and I didn't study, and my mom took me to the drive test center, and I failed my test, and I was so embarrassed. Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
But I think it was like $10 to retake it, and I passed it the second time.
Did you take it the same day?
Like literally, I just retook it immediately.
Okay.
But that was like one of those lesson learned, should have done some studying.
Just put some extra time into studying it.
Yeah.
That handbook is really great.
Yeah.
And I actually think it's worthwhile to like go through that handbook, even if you've been driving for years, just as a refresher.
Especially, rules. I mean, look, the rules are largely the same, but definitely a more modern version of that book, not the one that you took or read when you took your test, because
I'm old. Those rules don't apply anymore.
Well, kind of, and it's even stuff like, remember, it was always talked about like, the like 10 and 2 is your driver hand position, but it's become 9 and 3.
Yeah, and so that was Andy's next question. Is that what?
Well, see, I'm already passing the test.
Yeah, exactly. What driving rule has changed since you got your license that would catch people off guard? And I think that's one that would
10 and 2, 9 and 3,
catch people off guard.
100%. I think people would. And then the other ones to keep in mind, these are a little less about, sort of, they're rules, but it's like the law. Recognizing, how much the laws have changed to curb street racing and stunt driving and distracted driving. So like in Ontario now, it used to be that street racing or stunt driving, it was 50 over, your car would be impounded, and now it's 40 over. So they've really kind of ratcheted up the, severity of those penalties and what triggers it.
Right.
So you got to be careful. So again, it's just important to brush up on that stuff.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because I remember back when I got my driver's license, seems like a million years ago, but that's when backup cameras were a novelty. Like, they didn't come in every vehicle. They came in some vehicles, and I remember some friends telling me that when they did the part of their test that involved parking, the instructor would cover up the screen so you couldn't rely on it.
Look, you and I have had this conversation before. I seldom use the backup camera in the vehicles I test. My Golf doesn't have one because it's too old. But all vehicles since, I think it was 2018, they became mandatory on all new vehicles sold in Canada. But I try not to use the camera because it's important to be able to do it just in case that screen stops working, or if you're in a vehicle that doesn't have one, it's good to know the dimensions of your vehicle and not become too dependent on technology.
Yeah.
That feature is there for a good reason. It's mandatory for a good reason, is that it is good for safety, but it's also important that you know what you're driving and the size of it. So
you don't want to rely on it.
No.
It's there as a backup.
Yes.
Of course, they're super handy, and I love having a reverse camera.
Oh, here's another rule that's probably changed since we took our test, is that, it's always been, and Jodi knows how much my blood boils when there's an emergency vehicle and people don't stop. But the sort of amendment to the law and to the rule book that would be more recent is that it also applies to tow trucks now. So if a tow truck is stopped on the side of the road with its emergency lights going, that you have to move over a lane just as you would for a police vehicle or a fire
Because
paramedic.
it's all about safety.
Yeah, give them space because, too many crashes have happened. It's one of those weird things, right? It's like moths to a flame. I don't know. There's so many videos that you'll see or aftermath photos you'll see of, let's say, like a police officer has someone pulled over on the side of a highway and another vehicle just
smashes right into them.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's, one of those things where you're not paying attention and then all of a sudden it's like the bright flashing lights.
I think it's one of those things where it's like you're distracted by what's going on. And that's why you have to look where you want to go. Because if you're looking at that crash, you're going to crash into that crash.
It's really, so, again, like give them room. And Jodi keeps teasing me. This is how she keeps me on the podcast. It's like, oh, Dan, don't worry. We'll talk road safety soon.
November is road safety
month. I got to wait till November.
Our road safety episode, where we're going to talk about all of our pet peeves about road safety and what we see when we're out on the road, that will come in our November episode.
Okay, cool.
And Andy's last question, he says, bonus question. A lot of people have feelings about anchovies and pineapple on pizza. Ooh. But would you ever order a pizza that features a sunny side up egg? I would say yes. I've had pizza with eggs on it before, and it is delicious.
I just had that. Remember I sent you the photo? I don't know if it's just pronounced SOI snacks or if it's like soy snacks. I don't know. But I read about this fantastic sort of like fusion pizza place that's in I think it's in Markham. You guys should.
Well, Andy's from Markham. You can probably
you should look it up because it's fantastic. And they do like pad thai pizza and stuff. So they do like egg on the pizza, and man, it's so good.
I love eggs on pizza, especially a sunny side up egg. One time I had a breakfast pizza with it had bacon and a sunny side egg. It was delicious.
I don't eat meat anymore, but if you guys have never tried either ham or pepperoni, pineapple and hot peppers, might sound like a weird combo. Trust me, try it. You'll love it. I've also had pulled pork with jalapeno and pineapple, and it's just weird combos that...
You've really got him going now. Dan's favorite topic is pizza. So thank you so much for your question, Andy. And if you have any questions for Dan or myself about cars or pizza or whatever, you can email us at expert@trader.ca.
If you want to talk about why the spare tire is called a pizza cutter wheel, because it's so skinny and cute.
So skinny.
Anyways.
Well, thank you for joining us on episode 9 of Own the Road with AutoTrader. Till next time, see you.